Wake up, it's the Tim Stevenson Show. What's up, y'all, and welcome to the Tim Stevenson Podcast. I got a special guest today, Mr. Eddie Garcia, world-renowned choreographer for artists like Jennifer Lopez. He worked with Janet Jackson. He worked with Michael Jackson. We're just going to talk about some live stuff, but first, a word from our sponsor.
Do you want to stop the looters from destroying your store? Do you want to put a stop to the bricks flying through your door? Then you need D-Loot. That's right, I said it. Capital D-E Loot. The only product guaranteed to stop looters from taking your property and ruining your store. I've been using D-Loot for weeks now, y'all, and dang, what a difference. No bricks through the window, no looters in my store, and no graffiti on the wall. D-Loot, made right here in South Florida. Spray it, squirt it, splash it on the thieves, and dilute their wicked ways. Again, that's D-Loot. It's time to stop the madness, y'all. Get your bottle of D-Loot now at dloot.com and stop the chaos. D-Loot, let's water them down.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Tim Stevenson Show. I am Tim Stevenson, and in the house today we have a special guest, world-renowned choreographer and good friend of mine, who's got countless credits, including Janet Jackson, Michael Jackson, Paula, Abdul, just to name a few. Saved by the Bell, you name it. Mr. Johnny Dakota himself. Mr. Eddie Garcia is in the building. What's up, Eddie Garcia?
Hey, brother, how you doing?
You know, it's a COVID paradise, man. I don't even know what to say. You know, I'm just almost in shock half the time on just daily current events. I feel like it's slowed down a little bit, but you know, I just feel like it's different. It's weird. Who knows when we're going back? I know you're a busy man. How's it affect you and where you're at?
Well, you know, it's been an interesting time. You know, I work with a lot of kids, and because I'm an instructor and because we want to keep their spirits up, it's been a challenge because I think the disconnect that sometimes Zoom can do is the challenge. It's the kids are on there to do school, and then how do you get their interest to do a dance class because they've been on there for 5 hours doing school, and how do you keep them focused and they're in such a I think the way their brains work too, because of how instantaneous things are available to them, that just being on a Zoom thing, it's different. You have time. There's time in between. And sometimes I think keeping their focus is hard. You know, I was teaching some kids today, and we were doing a stretch class, and one little gal, she's 8 years old. She's just dancing to the song. She was like, I'm good. I'm just dance. I'm like, hey, do your thing, man. Do your thing.
Right. So do you think that, at first, I guess it was, I don't know if it was exciting or just different, that kids were like, hey, I got to take class in my living room or my garage or whatever space I have at the house. And then over time, you think they just got bored and there's too many distractions? Because like you said, if they go to school for a few hours, right, at home, the last thing they probably want to do is sit at a computer again, right, and dance? Or do you think at the beginning it was all good and they just got tired?
I think it depends on the kid. You know, I think it depends on what the art form means to them. You know, I think some kids approach dance and it's their soul.
Right.
So however they can, like the way maybe we used to watch videotapes and go, I want to dance that dance, and you watch it over and over, and it didn't matter how long. Right. Because that's what you wanted to do. For other kids, I think it was something more, it was the social aspect of it was what was interesting to them. And that can be challenging because you're trying to reach them and trying to encourage them to still stay with it. But I get it. They don't feel the connection through a screen.
Right. And then now, so we're still in this COVID thing, and even though they've eased up restrictions, coming from a choreographer's point of view, like doing dance numbers and a recital and spacing and supposedly being social distancing at the same time, how hard is that, and how does it affect how you choreograph and what you're doing?
Um, so the studios that I'm involved with are all deciding to do virtual recitals this year, and they're all going about it different ways. Some of them, the kids are filming themselves at home, learn a minute of a dance that you were doing in class, send us the minute, and then we'll edit it together, and and we're making like a little video that way. Other studios are having the kids, though in certain states, they're already going into dance classes and they have squares mapped out, and they keep the doors open, and there's like, so there are kids, and I don't know if that's right or wrong, because it's so uncertain right now. Like, I'm going to try to do some stuff with some of the kids, and we may go into a park. Right. But part of what I will insist on is that you can't hang out. Like, you guys can talk, but you got to keep your distance. And if you're going to come up and want to talk to each other, wear face covering. So like one of the groups I'm working with, we're going to go into a park setting. And part of the challenge will be to get the kids to understand that you can't really hang out with each other. You got to keep your distance. It doesn't mean you can't say hi. It doesn't mean you got to be aware, and if you're going to wear a face covering, but the whole idea is that we're going to be outside. I'm going to probably do 15 feet.
Okay.
Because I want the kids to be safe.
Right.
It's different if you have a pair of sisters and they live together. It's different. They can dance right next to each other. It's like,
exactly.
But I think it's, until there's a vaccine or a treatment that's suitable, I think the responsibility as an individual is to have someone else's health in like, I wouldn't want to get you sick because you're my friend. Right. That's how I think about it. I don't necessarily always worry about myself, but me having the idea that I'm wearing this face mask for you. Right. And I think that's the right attitude to have. Like, I thought it would be cooler for the kids to experience making a video, but we're going to do responsibly. Like, my buddy's going to shoot, but he and I aren't going to stand right next to each other. He's going to shoot. He'll be, over here. I'll talk to him or I'll text him if I have to, whatever. Mm-hmm. And we do our best. And I think it's doable. I go for walks and I have my mask with me. And like, I went on a bit of a walk around Lake Arrowhead the other day. And when I wasn't around people, I didn't have my mask on. When I got around people, I would put my mask. I had it on, but I would put it up. Right. And I saw a little older man walking, hit an oxygen thing. Heck yeah, I'm going to put my mask on.
Right. Yeah. I got what you got. So you've been out and about too. So what about like local stuff? So you're in Laverne. So local restaurants, local bars are starting to open back up. Are people rushing to go all hang out in a space? Or people are still like leery about, being able to be in public with a few people?
Oh, no, people are like normal, like it's out. Yeah. Yeah. And part of the reason, I'm all about support your businesses. Right. And I think it's, I know like in one of the cities, they're creating outdoor, the city's helping create outdoor seating areas for the restaurants. So they actually are taking parking spaces and putting tables in the parking space and then building a fence around the tables. Oh. It's like a temporary fence. I think that's a great idea. Sure. Allowing openness, Some other restaurants, I think they are pushing the 6 feet rule a little too, it's a little too close for comfort for me.
Oh. Barely 6 feet kind of thing? Or
I'm here, but there's someone like right there. We're back to back. And I'm like, I don't know you.
What do you got?
I think there's a false sense of security when you don't know anyone that's had it.
Right.
And I think I've had too many friends and too many people I know that have had friends or family members, you know, people that I've worked with that have had it, you know, and so I take it pretty serious. It's, you know, it's a serious thing. But if you haven't seen it and you haven't had it and you don't know anyone that's had it, it doesn't seem real.
Right. True.
You know, but then, you know,
on TV every day and people are dying, but if they're not close to you, it just feels surreal. You know what I mean? It feels like
it feels like a movie. Like, it doesn't feel real. They feel like, oh, well, that's not happening here. And then you find out, like, you know, I think some states are starting to find out that they better, you know, buckle down because, you know, I think one disease specialist was saying, you know, there's going to be a second wave, except that, you know, I think a lot of the specialists feel like there's going to be a second wave. And I think they also feel like we opened up. We're not really going to go back. It's just not that's not how people think.
Right.
You know, so taking these chances, unfortunately, I think a lot of people are going to be affected that maybe we could have saved, you know, and
yeah.
But again, I don't know.
Right. And then of course, as soon as we're like right in the middle of trying to figure out COVID, right? Then we get this other big disaster, which is the George Floyd disaster, simultaneously creating chaos and creating a lack of social distance because you can't social distance and protest at the same time. It's impossible, right?
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I think the thing is like, it's a beautiful thing to see people standing up for what is right.
I agree.
The hard part is this false sense of security that just because you're wearing a mask, but you're standing, you're walking, you're marching, you're breathing heavier, you're around thousands of people, and you don't know. You know, it's a petri dish of uncertainties. I mean, the great thing is they're outside.
This is true.
The chances of them catching it, from what I understand, are probably slimmer than greater because, again, they're outside. It's caught more from touching your eyeballs, but people don't always follow.
So what would be the difference between being outside in a protest and in an open football stadium?
Well, in football stadiums, I don't know, we've been there. I mean, your seat feels like it's this big.
Right.
And you're like,
but you're still outside, right? I mean,
you're outside, but I think you're stuck.
True.
And you got to walk through people when, you know, you're trying to get that next beer and stuff. And you're like pushing them aside.
Or in Minneapolis, that next firework or something that you
right. And they're like, ah. So, you know, I heard they're trying to figure out a way to do the stadiums like at half capacity, but still, I mean, even then, I don't know what does that mean?
Every other seat is still closer than 6 feet apart at a stadium, right?
Right.
Every 3
you know,
feet.
who knows what I know. Right. Like in Europe, some of the soccer teams were doing, they were playing with no people in the stands, and then to air it, they put in fake sounds. So like if someone kicked the ball and then they put in sounds of people going, yeah, I was like, that's crazy.
But the players can't hear that. So it's not like you're getting pumped. Nope. You know what I mean? The crowd gives you energy.
Yeah. But I was like, go for it, TV. Well, yeah.
My thing, okay, in the last, I don't know, maybe a week, you know, there's a couple of days where I got really wrapped up and really emotional about, it's not the fact that it's just George Floyd. It's what it represents, right? What it represents was like racism and things where police officers will get away with things, because I know police officers. I know great police officers. But if you don't weed out the bad ones, what we get is that. And if they're profiling a certain demographic of person, right, then that's a problem. And this problem's been happening, Rodney King, you name it, we can go down the list, you know, and all them people who unarmed get jacked, right? We've seen guys carry AR-15s who are white and they get questioned, or they take the McDonald's on the way to prison, whatever. You know what I mean? So what I've had to toy with is being in an entertainment business and being around a diversity of people my whole life, is especially being African American and having things happen to me over my lifetime, is this one kind of like got me. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, I was a little bit upset at Rodney King, but I was a lot younger. Now, because it's been happening again, I really felt like I was angry for a second. I was like, why? Why are we back here? I felt like we went back to the 50s, you know, and then having people comment, and even people that you know, other people that are in your circle, dancers, choreographers, whatever, with a weird difference of opinion based off race, even though most of them are very diverse and work with multi-races, you know, but they want to hear certain things, you know, so then they tune it out, or they get upset, or they comment, and everyone's, you know, a buddy of ours that we both know, he was like, if you don't like what I'm saying, delete me now. You know what I mean? Just like that.
I think so. Like, I spoke to a friend of mine, and he was talking about Dr. King.
Mm-hmm.
And he was saying, you don't think Dr. King had to meet with people that he didn't like and have a conversation? And I was like, true that. He had to meet with some people that 2 weeks before had dogs sicked on him, you know, and do you know what I'm saying? I think being passionate and being wanting to work for a greater good and wanting to change things is admirable and very important.
Right.
How you go about making that change and how you decide to put that message forward is where sometimes I think you have to be careful, because you can relate it to kids. Sometimes when you tell a kid they can't do it, what are they going to go do? They're going to go do it because they feel like you've put something on them. And I think I have my cousins are police officers, and they're great police officers, and they risk their life every day.
Right.
But I agree, there's bad seeds in a department. And so beginning that dialogue with departments and getting that change to happen is so important, because it's, if you don't have order from the people that are keeping the peace and the order, then how do you move forward as a society? Like, what, you know, these are the people that are supposed to help protect you. And if you're afraid of them, how does that work? You know, I don't think it's fair for people to put their convictions on other people. I think everyone has to approach things the way they think is best. And I think sometimes people don't want the attention on them, because that's not the message.
Right.
They don't want the attention on them. Doesn't mean that they're not doing stuff in behind. Maybe they've written to people. Maybe they made phone calls.
Yeah,
maybe they
donated to whoever. You know what I mean? Yeah, absolutely. You know, and everybody.
You know,
you don't. There's no right or wrong in wanting to do something right. Does that make sense? You know what I mean? So if you paint a mural, that may be your way. If you write Black Lives Matter, that may be your way. If you donate to a cause that's going to help a movement, maybe that's your way too. None of them are wrong. But when people start pointing fingers at you because you're not doing what they think you should do, then that doesn't help. It's like the reverse. It's a problem.
Well, when you see kids and they're doing a peaceful protest, and you'll see people come out and try to agitate them and yell at them, and they're in their face, you're not going to change that person's mind. They've already made up their mind.
Right.
That person that's yelling at you. But then in turn, if you're yelling at someone and you don't know who they are, or you don't know what the situation is, you're not going to change that person's mind. You're not going to get them to have a dialogue. I believe some people have made mistakes and are trying to better themselves. I also believe some people are doing it for business sakes, you know, they're
have you seen the influencers? Oh my God. I mean, Jesus, it's like one after the other. Hey, let me go take a picture. Like, I'm helping by drilling this one screw into a wall for a store owner, and then they get into a car and leave because they're in their social media.
Yeah. And I think, you know, you have to, like I said, standing up for a cause is very important.
Right.
I'm all about encouraging people to get behind your cause is different than telling people to get behind your cause.
You shouldn't have to tell anybody anything. If you want to educate people, educate them. Like, I've had to do that. So my biggest thing that I was fighting emotionally was people who automatically default to all lives matter when you say Black Lives Matter without thinking where the source comes from. Are there radicals in Black Lives Matter? Yeah, just like there's radicals in government and Me Too movement and all the movements, right? There's always bad seeds. But the root of Black Lives Matter is trying to be included in all lives matter. That's why we're saying Black Lives Matter, because if Black lives did matter, we wouldn't be having this conversation. It would just be all lives matter.
But that matter is what the key thing is Black Lives Matter. They do. They do. Like, this matters to us as a society. This is important because it's not fair.
And being dismissive pisses me off. You know what I mean? It's dismissive to just be like, all lives matter. Oh, okay.
But that's a given. You know, that's a given.
People say blue lives matter. Yeah, blue lives matter. But the police aren't being killed, right? Not on the level of African Americans in this country. They're not being killed. Now, with that being said, because I have friends who are officers in FBI and Secret Service and all that other stuff, I will say this. Because people are mad at the cops, it's a general statement because it's about cops murdering people and not being convicted of murder, right? So you have to go, well, then the cops need work because, if you got a team that plays dirty, right, you're going to be like, the team is dirty, even though there's only 2 people who play dirty on the team, right? So it's like an overall thing, but everyone's like, well, I have friends that are cops, and well, so do I. We all do. Killer Mike's got, like, I think everyone in his family is a police officer, right? But that's beside the point. It's like, we need to weed out the bad ones. And if the blue code says don't rat on police, that's a problem, especially if they're standing on your neck. You know what I mean? And I don't care what anybody says. Yes, does George Floyd have skeletons in his closet that did some shitty things when he was younger? Of course he did. But of course, a lot of people have. They didn't deserve to die for it.
No, but that's why we have the judicial system.
Right.
It's supposed to, you're not guilty before you're, like, you have to go through a process. And I believe, like that officer, the sheriff that was in Flint, Michigan.
Oh, I love that guy. Chris Swanson or something like that. Yeah.
You know, he went, I hear you.
Thank you. Right? That's all it was needed.
And everybody went, whoa. And that's, guess what?
And they marched with him, and it was peaceful.
Because he goes, I hear what you're saying, and you're right. And this is how we make change.
But if you knock over an old man because you got a suit on, you got a problem.
Okay.
If you're the 15 guys who quit because the other 2 got fired, you were a bad cop anyway. Well, I think it was just a task force. They didn't quit the police department, right? It was just like a task force that they made for protest.
I think, like, I spoke to some officers at a restaurant, and I can't speak what it's like to be an officer.
Right.
So I don't know the day in and day out things that they have to go through. So again,
but it's not excusable anyway. It doesn't matter what they go through every day. People in life go through shit every day. Doesn't give you justify murder.
No, you're completely right. But right. I think it's also quick. You can't generalize them all. And I think that's important.
I know how that feels.
You know what I mean?
Right?
No, exactly.
I know how that feels. Right? Because that's what's happening.
Yes.
Some people generalize a whole class of people.
Yes.
And then those people are targeted, right? So but then people jump on the police side and say, look, nobody's targeting the police. People are just verbally saying the police, they need to fix this. Whatever city, some cities are better than others.
Yeah.
And we know there are probably more good cops than bad cops, but every bad cop that kills an unarmed black person, and it's the same MO, it's not like they're killing unarmed white people or unarmed Asians. You know what I'm saying? So it's a certain class of people that are always getting the short end of that stick. So of course it's a broad statement to say, it's the cops. But just like those peaceful protesters, they're yelling because they're angry at the situation, but then they're hugging the cops that are there because the cops are people. Just behind that badge is a real person, right? A father, probably a son, a grandson, or whatever. So, but it's the dynamic of it, right? And there's no leaders right? Until now, there's some that are popping out of the woodwork, but there's no leader. We don't have a leader going, let's fix this. What we got is people kind of whitewashing answers, or like, you know, not really getting to the point and just saying, well, this is horrible. What happened to George Floyd was horrible, you know. And then we got the highest level saying nothing about murder. And then you have other cops going, that was murder.
Yeah.
Right?
I think, you know, it's shameful to see abuse done towards people because of what they look like, where
Right.
they're from. You know, I've been profiled. You know, it's happened to me.
Absolutely.
You know, I've also had the other side of it where I've sat across at a table and heard some people talk, and like I remember once I was up in Canada, of all places. I sat at a bar having some food. There was a guy drunk at the bar, and he started calling me some nasty, derogatory names.
Mm.
And I was like, who's he talking to? And he was looking at me. And I went, oh, he's talking to me. All right, whatever. I'm going to let it go. You know, and then some two guys walked up to me, and they're like, I don't know how you're doing it. And I was like, how am I doing what? They're like, I would have punched him. And I was like, nah, you know, he's drunk. He's an idiot. It's not worth my time right now.
And then he's drunk, in that order. It's like when I
Yes.
walked out of a Starbucks in Balboa Island, the guy was like, darky, dark skin, dark. I remember when it was all white. And I'm like, who the hell is talking like that guy?
What is that? Like, it's crazy.
It was almost
and
so
like,
surreal. I was like, whatever. You know what I mean?
and I've had some friends who are on maybe not the same side of opinions as myself, and I've had conversations, and I was like, well, have you ever put yourself in the position of the people that you're saying you don't understand? Because maybe if you put yourself in the position, how would you feel if this happened? How would you feel if this happened? How would you feel if this happened? You know, two friends of mine who are in an interracial relationship did 10 fingers. And it was, have you ever been pulled out of a car? Boom. Have you ever had a police officer pull you over? And it was like, it went on. Basically, the husband, all fingers were gone. The wife, no fingers,
Right.
zero.
So that's the part. That's the part of privilege that people understand. When people say, check your privilege, it's not like, hey, you're rich, you're privileged. That's not the privilege you're talking about. They're talking about the privilege of not having to deal with being profiled because of the color of your skin or because of your ethnicity for whatever reason.
And it's the way things have been set up in this country from
the beginning.
Well before I was ever born. And
this country was built on taking land and demeaning a whole class of people. That's what it was founded on.
So when every generation does something that pushes forward, there's also a group of people that push back because it's not how they perceive things to be. And it doesn't, like, you know, things are stacked up. Like, if I go to a bank and try to get a loan, things are stacked up because of my last name.
Right.
Like, I can't get the loan.
My name. It's when I walk in. When I say my name is Tim, they don't know what color I am.
Yeah.
Right? And they say, oh, if he's African American, then like, oh, he's African American. But like, then all of a sudden it's like a different conversation, just like you. Oh, Garcia. They just like, I don't even have to walk in, just my name. Right.
You know, there was a situation when I was a kid. This is a great example of someone telling me I had to change my name because I wouldn't work as much because having the last name Garcia stuck me in a certain class of parts. And I was like, I don't understand. They're like, well,
because there were no Latin parts then, right?
So they're like, change your name and make it generic. And I did it for a few months. And then at one point I turned to my parents and my sister and I said, I don't feel comfortable.
No,
it doesn't
what
feel
does generic mean?
My last name was changed to Gray.
Right.
I mean,
what they're really saying is change your name to a white name, right? Because that's generic.
Yeah.
Your name is too ethnic. That's what they're saying.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying. People don't understand that. Yeah.
So I made the decision to go back and change it back to Garcia at a young age. Because I was like, no, I want to be this because that's who I am, and and at the time, you don't realize that is a form of racism. People are telling you, change your identity and who you are, because if you don't, you can't fit in.
Right.
That's it. I mean, that's
exactly what that is.
Yeah. So
systemic racism doesn't exist. I'm like, are you kidding me? We had black and white drinking fountains. What are you talking about? So even when, when Drew Brees made the comment about Kaepernick, and I don't disagree that Drew has an opinion. I don't really care that's just his opinion. Whatever, he's entitled to his opinion. But when you're talking about, well, my great-grandfathers fought in the war, I go, well, so did mine. In the same war as your great-grandfathers. The only difference is when they came back from the war, they were told they couldn't eat in that restaurant because they were black. They couldn't drink out of that fountain because they were black.
Yeah. So, like,
you know what I mean?
So, like with Drew Brees, I have to ask you a question because he apologized multiple times. Do you think his apology felt sincere? Do you feel like?
I don't think he apologized. I think his publicist apologized.
So that's how you felt. You felt it fell flat.
He's not genuinely sorry. He doesn't have to be. I get it. Whatever. That's his opinion. But he's only apologizing because that's what your publicist said. Hey, this is not the time to be anti-cap, black, whatever. This isn't the time. And, and I forget the other guy's name who was on his team that clapped back at him, right? Which is justified. Because he didn't say, you're an asshole. What he said was, excuse my language, what he said was, you should, shut the F up. This isn't the time for that. This is the time for you to jack a person who had a silent protest during the middle of a bunch of violent protests, right? So, yes, that's what you don't agree. So what? You don't agree. I don't agree with you just because my great-grandfathers fought in the same war as you.
Right.
I'm probably the same age as Drew Brees, right? So maybe even a little bit older, right? So my great-grandfather fought. My dad was military. My grandfather was military. His grandfather was military.
Now, what do you think? I'm like flipping the script on you right now. What do you think? When is an acceptable amount of? When do you think someone who's maybe, like, I was listening to a YouTube show, and the person talked about comments that they made probably about a decade back, right. And they said a certain word because they were making a statement about something, and they weren't trying to be derogatory, but using the certain word they shouldn't have used.
Right.
And someone, in the context of everything that was said in the thing, you can tell they weren't trying to be racist. Right. But someone called them out and said, "You can't say that. You can't say that.
Right.
You cannot say that." And they said, "You are right." And they went, "I will take this down." And the person that they spoke to said, "Don't take it down. You don't have to take it down. Just don't do it again."
Right. You can learn. You can make mistakes.
Yeah. And the reason the person kept it up, he goes, because he didn't want someone to take a soundbite out of the entire, just one little section.
Right.
And use that and say, "Well, they said this." And he goes, no, that wasn't what I said. What I said was this, it's a longer, but you're taking this much of it and making it and then flipping it, right, because it happened. And he goes, it happened. And so I found that interesting too, because again, I was wrong. And they kept saying I was wrong. And they kept saying how they've learned. I mean, they're in a interracial relationship too, which I was like I spoke to my wife and I was like, "Yeah, we're in an interracial relationship." And she goes, "That's weird. I've never thought of it that way." And I was like, duh.
Oh.
Yeah, I know. But because she doesn't see it's funny. It's, you know, God bless her. Color isn't what she sees. She sees people. That's what she sees.
Right.
And that's
I like
that's
the way you worded that, by the way. I like the way you worded that because a lot of people, they tell me they don't see color. And I'm like, that's complete crap. Everybody sees color. You just happen to love all colors. You happen to not let colors affect anything about that person or you. So when you just say you don't see color, I know what you're trying to get at. Like,
yes,
oh, I'm colorblind. But you're not actually colorblind.
No. But like a little boy was on the computer with his dad, and his dad was pointing at pictures. He goes, "What do you see?" And he says, "I see two little boys." "What do you see here?" "I see a girl kissing a boy." "What do you see here?" And he never mentions any race. He doesn't, because he just sees. He sees the essence of the people.
Right.
You know, and I think what's crazy to me and what I don't understand as far as racism and race that I don't get is, like, do people not understand that if you take someone's skin and rip it off, we're all exactly the same?
That's not really the root of the racism. Right?
No, I know. It goes
way deeper than that, because in order to have a ruling class, you have to have a slave class, right? So when slaves were brought here and weren't even considered people,
right?
Since then, we've been fighting this war to be equal. When we were equal, when we were born, it was just that in this country they made black people slaves, they killed the Indians, all that stuff, and then over the time we needed, like, Martin Luther King and Jim Crow, and then all this other crap that was happening, and it's still embedded in people because it's been passed on generations to generations. There are people in this country today who still believe they are a superior race, and I'm like, we're all the same race, the human race, but they believe they're superior just based off their pigment.
Yeah, and it's crazy to me too when you see and people that are like, when your ideology and what you're putting out is hate speech against a certain group of people,
right,
which goes, so your grandparents fought against Hitler. Okay. Hello.
Well, it's like the protest in Charlottesville, right? If you say, while you're carrying a bunch of old school tiki torches down the street, Jews go home. There's no part of that conversation that says, oh, those are some good people in there. They really are saying that if you eliminate the Jews, we're in a better place. It's called genocide. That's entirely crazy in this day and age, right? So for somebody not to acknowledge that, when you have David Duke and alt-right walking down the street saying Jews go home with tiki torches, what does that tell you? That's straight hate. And Jews are the same color, right?
It's crazy to me too, because, like, it goes back to, I don't believe any kid is born a racist. It's taught.
So is hate. Hate is taught. Right.
It's taught, you know, and for whatever reason, I had my parents raised me to love anybody regardless of religion, race, sexual preference. It didn't matter. If they were good to you, you be good to them.
Yeah.
And if they weren't good to you, you be good to them. And I was like,
right. And it's the same way with, okay, so and you're in the movies, so every alien movie, like E.T., and like if a baby is born and you throw them into a forest, the animals instinctively will not kill that baby, right? Because a lot of animals are mothering, right? Especially the mothers, like lions. There's a Jungle Book, born, raised by wolves, whatever. The kid that fell in the gorilla cage, the gorilla didn't tear him apart. He was almost protecting him, and it was dragging him around like it would drag another gorilla around, right? But then they killed the gorilla, of course, right? And because in movies like E.T., aliens go, this pure life form has no opinion. They're pure. If they're not scared of you, whatever. And then you got humans, right? through hate and this and that and the other, trying to destroy it, trying to dissect it. So then everybody gets attacked. There's always like the child, right? Because a child is born a blank canvas. You know, and as they grow, the mom says, "Oh, we don't like those people; they're criminals. Oh, those people are whatever," and they're dropping N-bombs and stuff in the house. That's why you see like these random 2-3 white girls who thought it'd be cute on social media to put swastikas on their shoulder and take a picture and post it on Instagram, and they're like 15.
That's crazy.
You know
That's
what I mean?
crazy.
So it exists. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It exists.
Yeah, and it exists in so many forms, and it gets so like I had friends who went to one of the protest marches, and they're gay, and they got ripped apart by some of the marchers, and I went, what? Like what? Yeah. Like don't like. You know, I've had that conversation once with someone and like, I again, I'm not, you don't want to agree with me. You don't have to agree with me. You're your own person. But if you need to have people understand you, you have to be open and understanding of other people too, because you have to, someone who hasn't been, I had a friend, never been exposed to gay people that he knew of.
Right.
Was telling us I was pretty homophobic. That's what he was. We were sitting down one day and he was talking about it to us, and we were like, "Wow, that's crazy." Because like I grew up, you know, in a dance industry, so I didn't care. I was aware, but I didn't care. And he was saying, you know, once he was working out, his workout partner was like, "This dude, he's ripped and just like, ugh. And then one day, they're in the gym and they're working out, and you know, his workout partner goes, "Oh, hold on one second." He's talking to, and he goes, "Oh, hey, my boyfriend's going to say hi." And he goes, "What?" and he goes, he's been working out with this person for like a year. Right. Didn't even know. He didn't know. Right. He didn't know. And he goes, it changed his perspective of what he assumed.
Gay was.
What he, yes. And it opened up his eyes.
Right.
And he said it was like literally like an awakening. And I thought that was actually a beautiful thing, that it's funny how sometimes things work out that way. You're placed into a situation like we were placed into a pandemic. It's the year 2020. Look at the vision that this whole year has given us. You know, it's literally 2020 vision. Yeah. Of things are not right, and we need to get things, like this pandemic has forced people to be with their families and have conversations
and all kinds of stuff and good stuff,
and staying home and eating dinner together and talking to each other, and parents teaching their kids, literally teaching their kids.
The fish coming back, the seagulls coming back, the dolphins coming back, the ecosystem that's supposed to be like, you know what I mean?
It's like,
yeah,
you know, and I think again, the awakening of the things that have happened that are so horrible that have never, everybody always says, "Hey, we're going to change things." And they kind of go, "Elect me and I'll change it." Yeah.
The rug.
And then I tried to change it. Have to be the next person. That's not going to work. Like that is not going to work. It doesn't work. You got to fix it.
But see, this problem, we're going to exclude the rest of the world and just talk about law enforcement, right? And these codes. The issue is that when they do tell, right? There's an officer was talking about, you know, he's doing the right thing. He said, you know, this is going on, right? Blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden they're leaving dead rats on his front door, on his car. Somebody 2 days ago left dead pig heads on a stake in front of a
I saw that on the news.
See that? I was all, wow, that's deep. Like
but like, again, it comes down to, I think, the leaderships in all the communities have to have these conversations, and the leaderships within law enforcement have to examine what kind of environments they've created, and whether it's something that needs to be, if your ship is sinking, you better learn from the people to help build it and fix it, or else your ship's going down. Like sometimes you might not know how to fix it, but there are other people that know, and you got to listen.
Yeah.
You got to open your minds up and work. Again, at the end of the day, we elect our officials.
Right.
And it's not a party thing. I'm not talking about like this party or that. I'm saying
you just gotta
our officials,
right.
We have to participate in voting. We have to participate in holding up our officials accountable to things that we think are right or wrong. Right. If they don't fall in line, then we have to participate in voting and changing it. And we have to, and if you don't know how to do that and you want to get more involved, then start in your city council and work your way through and make a change, literally go in and make a change.
I had to tell a guy once, I was at a rent-a-car place, and African-American guy, and I said, make sure you vote. He goes, oh, I don't vote. I go, why? He goes, well, my vote doesn't count. I go, if you don't vote, your vote doesn't count. If you think the votes don't count, you should vote anyway because you think your vote doesn't count. But if you actually don't vote, it don't count. So at least do it. You know what I mean?
Well, and then isn't that something we fought for?
Exactly.
Like, isn't like
that whole, like, women couldn't vote. Black people couldn't vote. Then people say, I don't understand where this comes from. Really? Really? We had to fighting for equal rights. You know what I mean? Equal,
yeah.
Right? We're not saying we want more than anybody else.
Or someone says, so I think it was a comedian, he goes, civil, just be civil.
Oh, it was Michael Che. Michael Che.
I was like, civil. You're civil. I was like,
matters, not matters more than you, just matters, right?
Matters, yes. But
right?
See, those statements are so poignant and so on point. And what I loved is, here's someone that's saying something so important, using humor to do it.
Right.
So it basically breaks down people's guards, and then making a statement that hopefully will sink in. Sometimes you teach, I teach, and there's 150 kids. Right. And what you don't realize is that maybe you reach 3 of those kids.
Right.
Out of the 150, maybe you reach them, like it changed their life forever. And then those 3 go out and do something to better mankind somehow. And then those 3, now they've touched three others, and they've gone out.
Whatever.
Yes.
3, 6, 9.
And it keeps growing just because you reach 3.
Right.
And I think that's right now, like, I think, again, I see myself as a pretty peaceful person. I'm not confrontational with people. I'm a listener. Right. Even when I don't agree with people, I won't fight them on their opinions. I'll listen, because I always think in order to understand the enemy, you have to understand the enemy. Like, you have to listen so that you understand what they're made of. And that's how you take it down. Like, that's how you change it, because you have like, wow. Like, it's like,
well, and you have to just, like you said, you have to understand the enemy. It's like, there's some people that are just, they're tunnel vision, right? So I dealt with people with this in a talk about religion one time, right? I said, oh, you believe in God. I don't believe in God. Okay, that's cool. Whatever. You don't believe in God. You're an atheist? I don't believe in God. Cool. What do you believe in? He was like, I don't know. I'm more of the like satanic kind of person. What does that mean? I go, you believe in the devil? You believe in the devil? And they go, well, yeah. And I go, it's funny. The devil believes in God, but you don't believe in God. Who do you think the devil's ultimate nemesis is?
Yeah.
Right. So, but his mind was like, I just do this. I don't believe in that. It's like, I only see the world one way because that's what I've been taught. And God forbid I have to change my thought and thinking that maybe I was told a bunch of things that weren't exactly the truth, or little pieces that were left out of the story. Like the little chunk that was left out of the national anthem. Like some of the amendments have things in there that still say the word slavery to this day. Right.
Yeah.
You're like, hey,
Well, like, I've been pretty blessed. I've got to I've got to travel the world.
Mm-hmm.
I do not take it for granted that I live in the United States. And do I think it's the greatest nation in the world? I do. I'm pretty blessed.
Yeah.
I am. I see the good in what we have. And I see the good in what this country is supposed to be and what it can become.
Right.
Because I have been to places where they are oppressed. But it's interesting, like I went to China. It's a communist country. People were like, what was that like? And I was like,
wasn't like
well, I saw the beauty in the country and I saw the beauty in the people that I met.
Right.
Now, I had an understanding I was in a communist country, and when you're in someone else's country, that's you are the guest. Take it in.
And you have to know that. A lot of people embrace you. You just have to know the rules that you can and can't do. Because I've also been, I was in El Salvador, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, ooh, El Salvador, this is the land of MS-13, right? Like, you know what I mean? But when I got there, it was a little weird airport, but then it was just like nothing. I was a guest. I'm being carted around. I didn't go outside the boundaries or act stupid or not know to do certain things because you're in a foreign country. You don't know, right? So I embraced that. And like you said, you're in China and you're like, well, it's a communist country. Yeah, but when you're the guest and it's just like, you're just trying to find the people that are kind of like hooking you.
And it's funny because when you are open to the experience, you see, we had 20 American dancers and 30 Chinese dancers, and like it was so cool to have wrap-up parties with our Chinese dancer friends and having to communicate through a translator and cracking up and telling jokes and eating food that I would never eat my whole life and laughing and just like, and the commonality, is that the word?
Yeah.
Yeah. Of people, even though we went to a bar once, we didn't think it was a real bar. We were shooting the movie and we kept walking down this one street and it was the weirdest thing because there's nobody on the street and none of the buildings, we never saw people. I was like, is this like a movie set? Like, do they just use this street like as part of a set? That's what we thought. And then we saw this like Mick Jagger Rolling Stones tongue on this wall. And I was like, oh, that must be the American bar, or the Western bar. But we thought it wasn't real. And then one day, walking by, and I hear, and I was like, what is that? And I popped my head in, and it was karaoke night, and there was a death metal band, and I was like, what is happening?
Of course there was.
And then we walked in, and they like waved to us, and we're like waving, and nobody spoke English, and we didn't speak Chinese.
But see, you have to have an open mind, like you have, and I have, and a few people that we know have, right? Because the reason why, so when I went to France, everyone said, oh, they don't like Americans. And I said, okay, whatever. I'm just tuning that out. I'm excited to go to Paris. Get to Paris. I'm in awe of the architecture. I'm in the Champs-Élysées, so we're a nice place, right? But I realized that the only reason that the French don't like Americans is because Americans are arrogant when they're in France by asking people to speak English in their country. It's like, this is a French country. Why don't you speak French? And the same thing in Germany. I was in Dusseldorf. I was like, I'm going to a real bar because I want to drink a beer out of a stein like the Germans do, right? And I'm in the German bar, and nobody speaks English. Everything stops like the hush over Jerusalem because there are no black people in Dusseldorf. The difference between there are no black people in Dusseldorf as to no black people in Podunk, Alabama, is that they're not looking at me like, why the hell are you in here? They're looking at me like, what is that? Who is that? It's so intriguing. He's dark, right? And the guy was like, I was like, and just the universal sign for Stein, beer. And the guy went, rattled out something. And I go, 2, right? And then he came back and he's like, boom, boom. And then I drank. And I went like this, and everyone was like, yeah. Right? I was like, because I was open to like, I'm the foreigner. I don't care if you speak English or not. I'm just going to figure out how to just be a person in a room full of other people. Right?
Yeah, well, that's what we did. We were in the bar, and there 2 of us went first because, you know, me, I mean, you've been on the road with me, so, you know, right. I like to explore.
Right.
So we came back and we were like, yo, we found the spot. And they're like, what are you talking about? And they're like, we're like, there's a bar. And they're like, a bar? And I was like, we found a spot. So we all went on an adventure, and we went on a night, and they had karaoke, and they let us pick. And then this group of other guys were sitting at a table, they're smoking, and they're looking at us, and they'd never seen blonde girls. Oh. You know, we had a blonde girl and a redhead, and they'd never seen that. They were like looking and going like this, and we were like, oh, they've never seen a blonde. And then they're like, oh, you know, that's crazy. And we get up there, and the guy was like, gave us a book, and he goes, and he's showing us the book. It's a karaoke book. And we're like, oh.
You're in English.
Huh? It was in English. Yes. So
why is karaoke
I was like this.
Right.
I was like, Guns N' Roses.
Right.
So he's like, yeah. And then this one dude got up and he did this Chinese song, and we're like, yeah. And then one of the guys was like, came up and goes and saw one of our guys was like built, and he goes, he was pointing at him, and he goes, like, you're strong. And he goes, and I went, oh, I think he wants to arm wrestle you. And he goes, what? I was like, he wants to arm wrestle you. You should arm wrestle him. So they sat down, and our buddy was super strong. Yeah. So he was like, gunk, and the guy was like, oh, and we were like, oh. And he gave him, oh. And he goes, wait. And we were like, oh, and I was like, I think he's going to go get a friend. There was this other bigger dude. He didn't go get the bigger dude. He got the smaller dude. And he had the smaller dude. He goes, and I was like, he wants you to arm wrestle the small guy. And they sat there, and we had conversations, and it was funny because it was all through like our hands and gestures, and we were laughing, and they were laughing, and we had a great time. We left, and it was an amazing experience. You know, I thought it was like, wow, that's really, it was funny because
I would just say that's what you should do. That's what it's this country. You shouldn't go, oh my God, you're black, or you're Chinese, or you're whatever. Learn about the people and then love everybody. Isn't that what you're supposed to do?
Yeah, you know, and I think again, it comes to, I don't know, probably how you're raised.
And I know there's a system in every country, you know what I mean? But
I have friends that never want to ever leave the United States, and I'm like, I feel bad for them because I'm like,
and come back, you'll be a different person.
You'll be a different person, and your perspective on what life is about changes. Like me going to Morocco and seeing little kids working their butts off to try to make money so they can eat. Me going to Romania after the fall of the Russian Empire, and having a group, so we pull in, we had like armed guards, what was crazy. I was like, what's that? Like, there was these big holes in some of the walls, and they were like, oh, that's from the revolution. And that's when they were doing mortars. And I was like, oh, okay. And then they would tip the bellhop for bringing up all the luggage.
Right.
And the manager of the hotel came up to our road manager and goes, he had a question, and he goes, oh, is there a problem? And he was saying, the money you gave the bellhop. And he goes, oh, wasn't it not enough? And he goes, no. He goes, it's more than he makes in a year. And like in one night, this guy got more money than he made in a year. Damn. And he was like, and they were like, no, let him have it. Nice. And the kid was crying. Like, it just made his like, and it just makes you go, you know, at the end of the day, people are people, you know, like a virus doesn't see
The virus
borders.
doesn't know whether or not you're black, white, or indifferent. The virus is virus.
Yeah, it's going to get you. Like, if it wants to get you, it's going to get you.
I would like to thank Eddie Garcia for joining us here on the Tim Stevenson Show. You are welcome back, dude. Anytime, you know, you're my brother, so it is all good in the neighborhood. It won't be the last time we see you.
Wake up, it's the Tim Stevenson Show.